In an unprecedented attack, the DOJ and FBI have raided the home of the former President of the United States in what appears to be a merely political move. The Biden administration proves once again how far it will go to prove to the American people just how Orwellian things can be. Now, personally, I don't see what the big deal is. I mean, the government agencies are only criminalizing their political opponents in order to make sure they can hold on to power forever, which, of course, they're doing for the completely moral justification of saving our democracy. Lord only knows what else will happen as we get closer to the midterm elections and the Democrats get more desperate to hold on to power so they can complete the miraculous transition of the economy, the world order, and the English language itself. I'm Clayton, and this is the Crossworks Media Podcast. So as you guys know, on August 8th, Trump went out on his new platform, Truth Social, to put out a breathtakingly statement on how the FBI decided to raid his vacation home in Mar-a-lago, Florida. He put out, "These are dark times for our nation, as my beautiful home, Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach, Florida, is currently under siege, raided, and occupied by a large group of FBI agents. Nothing like this has ever happened to a president of the United States before. After working and cooperating with the relevant government agencies, this unannounced raid on my home was not necessary or appropriate. It is prosecutorial misconduct, the weaponization of the justice system, and an attack by radical left Democrats who desperately don't want me to run for president in 2024, especially based on recent polls, and who will likewise do anything to stop Republicans and conservatives in the upcoming midterm elections. Such an assault could only take place in broken third world countries. Sadly, America has now become one of those countries, corrupt at a level not seen before. They even broke into my safe. What is the difference between this and Watergate, where operatives broke into the Democrat National Committee? Here in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th President of the United States. This political persecution of President Donald J. Trump has been going on for years, with the now fully debunked Russia scam, impeachment hoax 1, impeachment hoax 2, and so much more. It never ends. It is political targeting at the highest level. Hillary Clinton was allowed to delete and acid wash 33,000 emails after they were subpoenaed by Congress. Absolutely nothing has happened to hold her accountable. She even took antique furniture and other items from the White House. I stood up to the America's bureaucratic corruption. I restored power to the people and truly delivered for our country like we have never seen before. The establishment hated it. Now as they watch my endorsement candidates win big victories and see my dominance on all polls, they are trying to stop me in the Republican Party once more. The lawlessness, political persecution, and witch hunt must be exposed and stopped. I will continue to fight for the great American people." So he put that out on his new platform, Truth Social, on August 8th. And that was such a bombshell. Like, I couldn't believe it. I sent it to Javen, which he's on vacation right now for 2 weeks. He'll sadly have to be listening to me for now on until he comes back. And I sent to him, and I couldn't believe. Even Javen was like, "What the heck?" Because who would have thought that? I mean, obviously, we think that how bad America's going right now, but we would have never thought that the DOJ and the FBI would be going after a former president of the United States and the premier political opponent of the current United States president. And I mean, we're such a banana public nation right now. All our institutions have been corrupt and weaponized against the Republican Party. All the government workers and stuff are all liberal people, and that's why Trump has come out and said that when he runs in 2024, that one of the biggest things he's going to try to do is fire, what would he say, 10,000 government workers, because that, like, when you talk about the swamp and the deep state, that's what we're talking about, is how many of these just regular government workers are all Democrats, and they just work to, every time there's a conservative president, they just constantly work to undermine their presidency. And so you can see how bad it's getting. I mean, this is such a Stalin-esque move. Like, if you go look through history, after Vladimir Lenin died in 1924, which Lenin was one of the very first guys who helped to start up the Soviet Union after they rebelled from the former Russia monarchy. So after he died, Stalin went for a power grab, and he started to come out and start saying that all these top communist officials and stuff like that were all traitors to the Soviet Union, and they had 3 wildly publicized trials that wiped out most of Stalin's political rivals. Kind of sounds like some of the stuff that we've been doing now with all these hearings and January 6th committee and stuff like that. High-ranking communists were accused of treason and betraying their nation. And this whole thing that Stalin did, it was called the Great Purge. And it began with politicians, but expanded to just the normal people. And Stalin had convinced the people that the people he was getting rid of were trying to stage a coup against the nation. So, I mean, if you look at that and compare that to what's going on with all the stuff in America right now, and the Democrats have such a hold on all the institutions of power in this nation, and they're trying to demonize the right side of the political party, and people are falling for it because this nation is so polarized, and there's no unity in this place anymore. And it's come to this where now the FBI and the DOJ are going to start going after Republicans just so they can, because they don't want Republicans to win anymore. And I mean, the media just hates Trump so much. All the Democrats hate him so much. And when did this start? You had to think that it had to start in 2015. They've always been against Trump since he started. And, they had this thing made up about that Steele dossier where that, this Christopher Steele or whatever, he was that British spy. He was in touch with a Russian agent or something where they were talking about how Trump was in leagues with Russia. And it came out earlier this year that the Clinton, the Clinton administration came up with all that stuff and gave it to the media, and the FBI and stuff knew that it was all a bunch of bull crap, but they ran with it. And so many of the people, like, it came out that it was fake, but I guarantee that most of the Democrats still believe that Trump is a Russian asset. And they lied about Trump, making fun of that disabled reporter when he did not. If you go look at the actual tape, but they cut it up and make it seem like he was doing something that he wasn't actually doing. When he was over in Japan meeting with Shinzo Abe, rest in peace, they made it, they were out feeding the fish, and they made fun of Trump because Trump dumped all the food for the koi fish all at once. And look how stupid Trump is. He doesn't even, he's disrespecting their traditions. But then they framed the picture and stuff to make it look like only Trump was doing it, when Shinzo Abe did the exact same thing before Trump did it. So Shinzo did it, and then Trump did it. So they completely lied about that. They lied about the very fine people on both sides at Charlottesville, when there were Nazis and Antifa people, and Trump came out and condemned the extremists on both sides, but he was saying that the media was demonizing all the side, like everyone on both sides, and saying that there were good people on both sides, but the media was putting out the sides that everyone was just a bunch of Nazis. So he was not saying that Nazis were good people. And they lied about calling the illegal Mexican aliens a bunch of animals when he was referring to the drug smugglers and the coyotes who are harming people on a daily basis. And you got to think about it. Why do they hate Trump so much? And if you go and look back at 2015, when he began his campaign, he began by calling out the media, which no politician has ever done before. I mean, the media has always lied to the people, going back to the yellow journalism of the Spanish-American War and the sinking of the battleship Maine, which, if you know a little about the history, it came, I think it was over in Cuba or something like that, one of those islands. And the Americans and the Spanish soldiers, they were friends. They had a good time and together over there. And then randomly one night, the battleship Maine blew up. And before there was even an investigation into it, the papers in the United States came out and just immediately started saying that the Spanish had blown up the Maine because they wanted to get us into a war. So this stuff isn't new. The media has always had a bias, and politicians have just dealt with it. The liberals have took control of these institutions and made the bias one direction. It's always against the Republicans. The liberals have such a control over the big media corporations, and Trump was able to open up our eyes to that. The legacy media channels and papers, for as long as we can remember, have protected the liberal apparatus and smeared the right, while the Republicans always were just taking a step back to apologize and lick the boot. The media always felt safe in their cog in the machine to spin the stories and aid the Democrats. No one had ever called them out until Donald Trump came around. Trump took every opportunity to call out the liberal media and call them fake news. All the stuff about when, Trump would be taking questions and someone from CNN would be asking a question. Nope, sorry, I don't take questions from fake news. And, that stuff blew up and everyone thought it was just the funniest thing ever because someone was actually starting to call out the liars in the media. He became their enemy and they had to commit all their time to bring him down. Most of their coverage was smearing Trump. There would be hurricanes and other natural disasters, but the spin doctors of CNN and MSDNC would be discussing how Trump was a threat to the foundations of American democracy. No matter what was going on, it was always just Trump, Trump, Trump. Trump is Hitler. Trump is worse than Hitler. And it was just like, it was so obvious, but people fell for it. That's what you got to realize. If you're listening to us, you're most likely conservative like I am, and you weren't listening to those garbage news outlets. They couldn't even allow some brash celebrity New Yorker who got famous for telling people, "You fired," to rip them out of their cozy throne. The media became weaponized and a new era of journalism began. Throughout Trump's presidential term, all media coverage was negative towards Trump. Even though he was bringing peace to the Middle East, they couldn't let people know Trump had done a single good thing. From the Abraham Accords to walking across the DMZ between North and South Korea, the legacy media was set to destroy him. I mean, can you guys think about that? No new wars were started under Trump, and the media and all the Democrats, politicians, and everything hated him so much because, Eisenhower, when he left, he put out that big thing about the military industrial complex or something like that, and how big it is and that we're going to be so screwed in the future. And that's one thing that, everyone realizes now is that back then, no matter, back in the 2000s, stuff like that, early 2000s, no matter if it was Republican or Democrat, they were pretty much on the same sides. Like, they always just fought for the institution, the corrupt institution. They were all corrupt, and they were a little bit different, but the Republicans were such squishes, and Trump kind of changed that because now we were becoming. I mean, if you look at the 2020 election, and it's a fact that the Republican Party got more diverse, and the liberal Democrat Party became more white and more rich. More rich and more white people voted for them in the 2020 election compared to the 2016, and more minorities and stuff voted for the Republican Party. So I mean, we're becoming just a more populist party, and it's so backwards because you always think of the left as anti-corporations, but the right is becoming anti-corporations, anti-government institutions. It's so weird. But Trump opened the way for independent news sites like the Daily Wire and many others to grow and expand because Trump got people to realize how corrupt and untrusting the normal media was. I mean, that's why they hate him so much, is because there was always these such trusted media outlets. And Trump really opened up our eyes to a lot of people's eyes to how corrupt and there's such a bunch of liars, and they'll spin everything to just get what they want you to believe. He was a threat, and the media polarized the U.S. into two sides who believe either Trump is a good president or the reincarnation of Hitler himself. All of this culminated on January 6, 2021, when protesters stormed the Capitol building. The media claimed Trump was inciting a coup to take over the country and put himself as the proverbial dictator. Of course, this doesn't make too much sense, as the man who was the leader of the free world could only send unarmed civilians for alleged coup. It just doesn't make any sense. And before I go on further, I missed a point about the independent media, but they were all cozy because they were all, they're set in their jobs. But Trump starts calling everyone fake news, and everyone starts believing him. And so, all these CNN and all their demographics, well, not demographics, but their like viewership and everything is down. And, the Daily Wire is now like, I think it was the 6th largest podcast, like company in like the nation, that's above like Disney and like massive corporations. And, all these independent media outlets have just boomed and stuff because people are stopped paying attention to MSDNC and all that bull crap. So the media exploded over January 6th, and Donald Trump was impeached for the second time, with some Republicans even siding with the Democrats because, that's one thing you can guarantee is that the Republicans will always squish, and, so they seem like, we're bipartisan. We don't always go with our side. We're for America, not the party, but America. It's so bullcrap. As Trump went out in the Alzheimer's-ridden babbling dolt we call President Biden came in, the liberal media still didn't forget Trump, because you got to realize that if they're, when Trump came in, their viewership actually started to go up a little bit because, people just either hate Trump or they love him. And they can't just forget him that easily. They were just making so much money off just slandering Trump all the time that even though he was out of office, they couldn't let him go. What is it called? Like Stockholm syndrome or something like that. They couldn't rest until the former president was locked up behind bars. The January 6th committee would eventually start, which is just a glorified mock trial, which was advertised as a drama TV special, which is they had a guy who was, I think he did part like actual TV dramas to head up the whole thing. It's not they act like it's a trial, but there's no one even there for defense. They're just up there talking how bad Trump and all his allies are, but it's just everything's smearing. There's no defense team. It's all prosecutors, and it's just it's just a propped up thing just to get people pissed off. And I mean, how many people actually believe all that crap? But with nothing of importance coming out of the January 6th committee, they needed something more, which leads us to the FBI raiding Trump's resort in Mar-a-Lago, because all this stuff with that lady saying that Trump had thrown himself at the limo driver and stuff and tried to choke him out and all this stuff. And they're like, but such bombshell testimonies. And, then Merrick Garland was starting to feel pressure from the Democrats across the country to indict Trump because they're like, what's all this, stuff going on, all this committee allegations and stuff what's the point of it if we're not going to actually go after Trump? So Merrick Garland started to feel pressure. And so guess what? Now we have the FBI and the DOJ going after Trump and raiding his home to look for classified documents, they say. And, what's going to come out of this? Are we going to have some, we haven't found anything right now about what they got, but we're probably going to get something in October because the economy and stuff is in such bad straits right now that they're scared that they're going to be losing the power once November comes. So, I'm sure they're going to drop something from this raid that's going to be such a crazy thing that's going to change so many people's minds in October. And, and if this thing first came out, that, Republicans across the nation and stuff were, saying how bad this was. And, some were even saying that we should go against the FBI and get rid of it because, it's such a bad institution. And there was even some sources saying that Merrick Garland and the DOJ had nothing to do with this. And we didn't actually know what it was. They were saying it was about classified documents, even though the president has the power to unclassify any document he has. And Trump isn't the first president. If you did take these, Trump isn't the first president to take classified documents. Obama, it's a fact Obama did it, and he kept a bunch of them in his personal library. Hillary Clinton did that. And she wasn't even the president. She took 33,000 emails and hid them in private servers in her basement. And when the Congress wanted to see those servers, she accidentally washed them and got rid of them. It's just, but FBI and stuff, they won't go look after Hillary Clinton or Obama or anything. They're going to go after Trump because they hate him. And you know what? It's kind of weird how they're going after Trump's secret documents. They broke open a safe, and yet it's a fact they went into Melania's closet. What were they doing in there? Sniffing her underwear? It's ridiculous. They were just looking for anything that, if you would think that if you're going to go and raid a former president's home who still can run, who's going to be running for president in 2024, will most likely be he will most likely win the primary. That, like, you're going to need a smoking gun. You're going to need something that is 100% evidence that he was doing something wrong. This man better be getting locked up if you're going to be doing stuff like that. Is he even going to be getting indicted? Who knows? And then it comes out, and the Washington Post is saying that there was nuclear codes and stuff or nuclear stuff that he was hiding in there. But okay, let's think about this. If there are nuclear codes that former President Trump was hiding in his house in Mar-a-Lago, why did it take 18 months for them to figure that out and go take them? If it takes them 18 months to figure out nuclear codes, with the amount of nukes and stuff that we have, where we can blow up entire countries using one of them, because they have the ones that fire into the atmosphere and break up into a bunch of different pieces, you think that we would be able to, the FBI and the DOJ would be able to find that a little quicker than 18 months. I mean, if they can't get that within a month, and they're such bad institutions already. I mean, what's the point of them? And what's going to come out of this? They're going to obviously demonize all of Trump's supporters, because it was just, earlier this week, they just came out that a Trump supporter went and attacked an FBI office in Ohio and went with a rifle and a nail gun because he said he found a way to break through bulletproof glass with a nail gun or something like that. And there ended up he ran off. There ended up being a shootout for like 5 hours, and they took him down. But he went on Truth Social and he was calling for violence against the FBI. And I guarantee, I haven't seen it right now, but I'm going to put, call me Michael Knowles, I'm going to put on my Nostradamus hat. And they're going to probably come out and talk about how, Truth Social is just a platform with a bunch of violent extremists are coming up with all these things, and they're going to have to try to shut this down. Apple and Google Play Store and all that is going to have to take Truth Social off their app stores. And I mean, when you look at it, you try to look a little further down the road and about what one of the biggest things that they might be trying to do with this. And it came out earlier that, I think a month ago, that high-level Democrats were giving money to Trump-endorsed candidates while at the same time calling them threats to democracy. So they're giving campaign money to all these quote-unquote threats to democracy to get them to win their primaries. So, I mean, if you look, like Blake Masters won his primary, I think, over the former senator. A bunch of Trump-endorsed people won over the senators who went against Trump. So, all these Trump-endorsed candidates are winning their primaries, and, what's going to come out of this? Now that they backed a bunch of Trump people, when something happens in, let's say, October, they're going to drop a bunch of things. Now they're going to say, oh, look at all these Trump-endorsed candidates. You can't vote for them. Look what they adore. They're such buddies with Trump, and look how bad Trump is. And so, they're going to put this last push for all the independents and swing voters to maybe vote Democrat, even though the nation is just in a garbage hole right now. And, they're just grasping for straws because of how bad they're running this country. So most likely they'll be trying to demonize all these Republican candidates for senator and Republican governor, all this stuff. But one of the things is Merrick Garland, came out and said that he personally called for the warrant and stuff. And then in the same statement, he goes on to say that, one of the things the DOJ and the FBI is they there's no bias. They equally try to, investigate the same sides and stuff like that. Like, there's no bias. But why didn't they go after Hillary Clinton? But then they're going to go after concerned parents in the PTAs, and I think it was in Florida, that are afraid their kids are being taught transgender ideology. That's a fact. Look it up. He talked about how he's going to go investigate the threats and stuff of parents in PTA because they're scared that their kids are getting, brainwashed into all this transgender bullcrap ideology. They're going to go after him, but they don't ever go after Hillary Clinton, which, speaking of Hillary Clinton, she's, monetizing all this crap where now she's putting out hats saying, but her emails and stuff like that, they're just making a mockery of our justice system. And you know what? They also don't go after Hunter Biden, even though we have pictures and video evidence of him committing illegal acts, going with China and stuff. They don't, all this, the laptop from hell, they hid that stuff from the public, and so we wouldn't know about it. And then after the election, then they're going to come out and say all this stuff, even though we already knew it. But, and Biden was a big part of that stuff, where he was saying he was going to fire a Ukrainian prosecutor. If they don't fire the Ukrainian prosecutor, he was told Ukraine that they're not going to get aid money. And guess what that prosecutor was doing? They were going after Burisma, which is a company that Hunter Biden is a part of. Kind of fishy things, but the DOJ or the FBI, they're not going to go after them. That'd be them doing their job. You can't ask too much of them, man. Come on. And no one should be even surprised at how the FBI is acting, because I'm only 22 years old. I don't know, half the stuff all you older people who are listening to this stuff know. So I'm sure that you guys know a lot more about. You guys probably didn't like the FBI from the start, but I'm sure a lot of you guys know about Ron Paul. He was a former presidential candidate, and he warned us about the FBI in 1988. So take a listen to this.
Most of our history, we didn't have those institutions. The FBI came in during the First World War. And interestingly enough, one thing that Woodrow Wilson did, he used the FBI to spy on American citizens and actually arrest them if they disagreed with his foreign policy about going to war in Europe. And isn't it interesting how recent they used it in the Vietnam era? Democrats used it there, and Republicans used the FBI to spy on 100 different groups in this country, including the churches, who disagree with the policy in Central America. It almost looks like the FBI was designed to spy on Americans who might be disagreeing with policy, especially the foreign policy. So the FBI, although I don't think I can condemn everything they've ever done, because I'm sure some of the investigations and investigation of crime has been beneficial, but that could be accomplished through Justice Department within our states. We wouldn't reject that portion of it. I think the FBI has kept and continues to keep a lot of records on a lot of individuals. The CIA has only been here since 1947. Their record is lousy. I mean, just think of the CIA used by the Democratic administration to...
Yeah, so I don't know why I cut off right there, but... So, Ron Paul was warning us about this before, that this thing was created to spy. It's always spied on the U.S. American citizens, and, we just got to be aware of this stuff. Make sure you tell people about how this, and, now I think Marjorie Taylor Greene just came out and said that now she's going to try to put forth the bill or something to impeach Merrick Garland, because guess what? Merrick Garland, he's a failed U.S. Supreme Court nominee who's mad that he didn't get on the Supreme Court. So now he's just going to go after all the conservatives and Republicans across the nation. And the guy is such a political hack. And, I'm so glad that he didn't get on the Supreme Court. And can you imagine a guy like this being on the Supreme Court? And now, people are attacking Merrick Garland. And, I just saw there's tweets online from, big time, like, liberals and stuff like that, saying, oh, of course, look, now all the Republicans are making fun of Merrick Garland, how anti-Semitic of them. I didn't even know Merrick Garland was Jewish. Why does it always have to come to that? It's so stupid, but you shouldn't be, you guys aren't surprised that they always have to come out, because as soon as the liberals start calling you racist or homophobic or anti-Semitic, you won, because that they can only just resort to name calling, because they don't actually ever have arguments. But what's crazy that the Democrats, the way they're acting is they're acting like they'll be in power forever. Like the Republicans aren't going to get in power again and then try to go against them. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if the Republicans do actually, if they get in power again, then I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do anything, because half the time the The liberals will do they know how to use power. That's one thing you can say about them is they know how to use institutional power, and the Republicans always just try to play the, being more, nice to our political opponents. We don't want to be like them. Bull crap. You better, if Republicans get in power in November, we better start doing some things. We better, doing some investigations into Fauci and all the, the DOJ and all this FBI. Instead of just doing investigations, we better start seeing people in handcuffs, because people are getting sick of Republicans saying they're going to do things, and then we're just going to have hearings, and then nothing is going to come out of it. So if we win in November, which, polls are actually starting to look a little more even, but at first it was saying that we were going to win pretty heavily. So don't think that we have this in the bag. You guys better be getting all your friends and stuff like that to be going out and voting in November. This is going to be such a big election. So much is going to be riding on this, and crazy stuff like this is happening in August. Just wait until what's going to be happening in fall, October. October is probably going to be insane. And, just one last thing about how bad the FBI is getting is it came out a couple weeks ago that the, Project Veritas and all that, I forgot what his name is, but it came out, there were some leaked FBI documents from Project Veritas that outline symbols that they're saying are commonly used by anti-government or anti-authority violent extremists. And you go and look at there was a bunch of things on there like flags, uniforms, merchandise, tattoos, and stuff like that. And most of the things that were on there were Revolutionary War flags or symbols and stuff like that. They had the Betsy Ross flag, which if you don't know what that is, that's like one of the very first flags that the U.S. had during the Revolutionary War, which is the 13 stripes and the 13 stars in a circle. They had the Gadsden flag, which is that, yellow flag with a snake saying, "Don't tread on me." What else did they have? They had the one in Texas where it's a cannon that says, "Come and take it." There was a couple of other ones, but yeah, there was saying anything like any Revolutionary War things, that those are anti-big government things. Like, heck yes, we're anti-big government. Look what big government has done to us. The U.S., you could say we're an empire, but we're going down the drain. We are just becoming so corrupt. And I was talking to my dad the other week about, because I have some younger siblings who are 12, 13, 14, and they were talking a little bit about some politics stuff, and I was like, I told my dad, I was like, how crazy that is. Like, when I was around that age, like I had no idea about politics, but everything has just become so insane that's like, how can these kids not know about politics? We always try to keep personal life and politics separate, but stuff has gotten so crazy now that the personal has become had become political, and the political has become personal. You can't escape the politics nowadays. There's no escaping it. It's just the everyday thing, and so you better just get used to it. Pay attention, and pray for this country, and yeah, because they're going to do everything in their power to stop us from ever winning again. And so just don't give up that good fight. And that's all for today. But make sure you like and follow the show. And I hope you got, I did sufficient enough without Javen. But yeah, just remember, guys, the cross works.